Hey everybody, my name is Rich and this is Rich Talks Records, episode number 64. And today is a momentous occasion. Today is the first new current band that I have ever reviewed on this channel. And that is to say they have only existed for a couple of years. They are as contemporary of a new band as you could possibly get. So today we're going to be talking about the debut album from the Orchids entitled Reflections, released, so what is it, mid-November? This was released about 2 months ago by the Sonic Muse. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, first, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got into the Orchids, a little bit of their band history, but also a whole heck of a lot about why it is important to me and why this is the first current band that I have ever reviewed on this channel. This goes out in a lot of different directions, so I have no idea yet exactly what this video is going to become. I've played it out in my mind over the past week, so we will take the journey together, won't we? The Orchids, I guess I'll talk a little bit about my history, as such I have any, with them. Let's see, it would have been December, I guess, of last year, of 2024. The great Mario Cuomo had posted a couple of releases from current local modern groups and said something to the effect of, "Today is a great day in the history of Chicago music." And the Orchids artwork was for their single Field Trips. And I wonder if I can throw that up right now. Rich, prompt. And I was immediately impressed by the artwork, and I immediately understood the artwork, because without even needing any further context, that is the sort of artwork, that is the sort of photo that, how do I phrase this? It spoke to me on an intuitive level. That is what slightly wayward, like wounded romantics who are young and wandering around, that is the sort of photo that they would take. Driving around and take a photo, like, that makes all the sense in the world. I, as a wounded romantic youth myself, made how many experimental films which were primarily just shot pointing the camera out of the car as it drove quickly, you know. And that photo, that sky, every single thing about it made sense to me. I heard the song and I thought, this song is absolutely phenomenal. And in January of 2025, so I started following the Orchids like on Instagram pretty soon after that, and they had said something about putting out a physical release at some point. And so 10 months ago, I basically hit them up and said, "You guys put out a record, I will review it." And the day has finally come. So the Orchids are a four-piece, and I hope I'm pronouncing this last name correctly. We'll take a shot at it. Caden Gilly. It's either Gilly or Gilly, so we'll say it's Gilly on lead vocals and second guitar, rhythm guitar. Matthew Ramirez on lead guitar, Connor Shea on bass, and Kate Krupa on drums, who I would have to imagine reasonably is related to Gene Krupa. There could be no other way, right? And you want to talk about indie rock, you want to talk about college rock. Well, indie rock, it doesn't get much more independent than this. Matthew was nice enough to hand deliver this album to my door, so it doesn't get much more independent than that. And as far as college rock, these kids, and I don't say kids as a pejorative, I say kids because I'm like a generation older than them, and that is, they are literal college students. They are all sophomores in college. They're all like 19 and 20 years old, which is wild. And I'm going to be talking about that because that is really, really fascinating to me. So they've done a handful of interviews that I checked out, and Matthew has been nice enough to answer my increasingly ponderous questions, like when I wake up at 3 a.m, you know, and I message him on Instagram. So I appreciate his patience. So the Orchids started in August of 2023, and it appears to have been something of a little bit of a bedroom project between Matthew and Caden. And the first two songs they wrote, I mean, this is a hell of a start. Their first two songs, "Standing in the Rain" and "Sorry Not Sorry," that's a hell of a beginning. Apparently, I mean, if you write songs of that caliber right out of the gate, they very quickly deduce that, yes, they have a band going. So Kate joined apparently soon thereafter, and then they recruited their friend Connor to play the bass. Connor is interesting. He appears to be something of a jack of all trades. And like the great Chris Hillman before him, was not a bass player, but was simply recruited to learn the bass. Like Chris Hillman, or I suppose Paul McCartney before him. There was you're the bass player. So Connor is really fascinating, and in some ways is something of the secret weapon of the band, a phenomenon I'm fascinated with in the history of rock and roll. But they're also interesting because they are very much a four-person lineup. You really cannot swap out the component parts, and they are one of those bands where all four parts are extremely important to what you're hearing. So, and that's actually part of what I really respond to the most in them. Now, we live, in a very different day and age, and I come from another time. I am from the past, and I understand that, and I accept that fully. I have no problems with that. I am good that I have made it this far. I think it's remarkable. So I don't really fully understand the phenomenon of the release history of the Orchids. I am slightly befuddled by that. So I'm just going to quickly run through the release history. So the first thing to come out was February of 2024, which was "Standing in the Rain," which was just the one song. Then the lighter EP came out in May of 2024. This album is effectively a combination of their two extant EPs. I will just say that now. Then the Field Trips single in December of 2024, which is where I come on board. The month after is the Down and Out single being, again, one song. But the month after that, a curious release of Mirrors, Down and Out, and Field Trips as something of a single or near EP, I don't know. The Reflections EP then came out in April of this year, and then finally this, as I said, a couple months ago. And I'll be talking about, obviously, this is Rich Talks Records, I'll be talking about the specifics of all of those things as we go. But for the moment, please indulge me. We're gonna go. I'll try to keep this relatively contained, again, by Rich Talks Records standards. And I'm going to talk about why the Orchids, and why now. Why is this important to me? And hopefully this will prove interesting. I have no idea. We're gonna find out together. So I have had a request from a viewer some time ago about, I wish you would review current music. And from the very beginning, from even before I had ever made my first video, I had kind of been of the opinion that I was never going to review any current music, unless it was an act that was already well established. So even my last video being the Twice video, they've already been a recording act for 10 years. So I just kind of assumed that would be the case sort of forevermore. And why is that? Well, part of the whole idea of me doing record reviews, and doing record reviews the way that I do them, and not really appealing to the way that YouTube does things, or even, the rest of the vinyl community. Am I a member of that? I don't really know. I maybe I'm on the outer edges of it. Who knows? But it was a way of, now that I was into my 40s, and remarried and a homeowner and a functional adult. It was a way of retroactively trying to understand my youth, understand some of my manias, and understand why some of it was so important to me. In part, I suppose the greater mission was to not have to carry so much of it around with me. There was, about almost 20 years ago now, Jesus, there was what I sort of call like the lost generation of rock bands. These bands that I really thought were going to be something and were going to go somewhere and didn't really amount to very much, or just sort of came and went. So even like Be Your Own Pet, who have reunited and tour, which is great, and I'm really happy for them. But like Be Your Own Pet sort of never got to like that sort of next level that I thought they were going to, and like the subsequent Jemina Pearl album didn't really sort of go where I thought that it was going to go. The album itself I like a lot, but in terms of its kind of impact, and then there were all these bands, like there was USA as a Monster. There were just all these bands that sort of were these sort of weird blips on the radar. And I was getting into my 30s, and I was starting to feel really awkward at shows. I was starting to really feel like the old guy at shows. I remember being at a show up at, I guess, Northern Illinois University? I forget where I was. But it was all these like, college kids. I mean, I felt old at whatever, 28, 29. It felt that there was a huge divide. And a lot of these bands, like I said, they just sort of came and went. And I was kind of tired of like hitching my wagons to bands that would be gone in a year. I didn't really enjoy this sort of constant flux and then turnover. And then I had a lot of life circumstances, as we all know, the divorce period, dun dun dun. And I didn't have time to worry about fucking bands when I was dealing with all that stuff. I mean, I had real priorities, and I don't really talk about this on the channel. My father was very sick for years and was constantly in and out of the hospital, and I had job stuff. I mean, I had like adulthood. I had real things to worry about, and I couldn't be checking out whatever the latest sensation future to be obscurity was. Or there was this Icelandic band, or Jakobin Arena, that I remember I really liked, and they were gone. I think they had broken up by the time the album came out. I mean, I just got really tired of this sort of, I couldn't find anything to like hitch my wagons to. And then I sort of all but stopped listening to music for a while there, because I just couldn't, I couldn't even think about it. I was so sort of like wrecked that, I would just watch World War II documentaries and like sort of stare at the walls, for a long time. I mean, so, and very rarely, like that one Grant Hart album or something, like very rarely something would get through to me. The first I rediscovered the first Slumber Party album during that time, which I might touch upon later, or that was actually when I got into K-pop, being up at 2 a.m. watching Mnet America. So, I just sort of, a lot of the things that had been my answers for years and years just kind of stopped working and weren't my answers. And I watched, I don't know, just sort of seeing people kind of age out of, like, looking at people that I had really revered from my youth, who were like contemporary bands, like when I was in high school and stuff, and like watching them age into a point where I had this realization in my late 30s, like, these people are never going to do their best work ever again. Like, they are a million miles away from their best work, And then I tried getting into like the Devo core bands, and that, like, they were cool, and this was the phenomenon of like finding music on the internet, was I would like the single, but not like the EP. And if I liked the EP, there never would be an album, or the album wouldn't be that good. Or then the band would just vanish. There never would be the album. On and on and on. These sort of, just the stuff had such a fly-by-night quality to it. And I like artists that are in it. I like lifers. I mean, it's no surprise that in the 2010s is when I started listening to the Melvins the most. Like, of course I did. These lifers who had always been there. That really appealed to me more than whatever. Trying to see an early show by a band that you know could their potential or their potentiality get captured. I just couldn't deal with that anymore. And so as I started doing record reviews and all of that, I was like, no, I'm going to talk about what I think is important. I'm going to try and understand why it was important to me, but I'm going to talk about why I think it was culturally important before and why I think it could be culturally important at some point again in the future, and what the lasting values and aesthetics are that I appreciate, but that other people potentially could appreciate also. And maybe, hopefully, in my own little way, I'm planting seeds for the future and doing it. On one hand, it's personal, but on the other hand, the great Edwin Canestracci, do it for the culture and trying to put something forward and in a contextualize things in a realistic and honest way and not in a propagandized way. And there's a lot I could say about that, but I will leave it there. So I think one of the things that really struck me about the music of the Orchids is that they have managed to synthesize. Now, it's interesting, having spoken with Matthew, I don't know from the other members. What is interesting is when the other members talk about indie bands and local bands and stuff, I have no idea who these people are. And honestly, I actually kind of think that's cool. I like that they have a pool of influences that, to me as a 48-year-old, I am wholly unfamiliar with. I think that's fantastic. Like, I like that. That's good. They should have their own culture that they are drawing from. It's good to know that young people have a culture that they can draw from. I am fully supportive of that. Like, I love it. And I really don't like, I'll just say this, I really don't like my generation groveling around trying to like kind of weirdly appropriate the younger culture and the younger generation, like, see, I'm still with it too, in that sort of way. I take a very, very dim view of that. I think it's really lame, and I think it is important to be what you are now. I think that that's extremely important. So, and I want to be clear, I'm not trying to make this video under any false pretenses, but the Orchids, and especially in having some conversations with Matthew, they are firmly rooted. Like he is an Anglophile and like a dedicated one. So Lush, Ride, the Stone Roses. He specifically mentioned John Squire as a guitar player influence. Let me tell you, you hear John Squire. John Squire's all over his playing in a good way. And Oasis, and then of course the Smiths, and like they are like firmly Anglophiles, and I think in their minds coming out of that tradition. Buzzcocks too, but I hear them differently, and the things that I hear in their music, I think that in my own little way, what the Orchids have managed, and on one hand, I was hesitant to even do this review because they are active and in real time. That's the other thing, is it's cool if I'm talking about Iggy Pop records from 40 years ago, because that doesn't retroactively affect anything. And I think that what the Orchids do, they are doing, and a handful of bands that I've gotten into recently, and I will be at some point next year reviewing another one of these bands I've gotten into, because there's a little crop of them, and it's very good for me in terms of my mental health. Because there has been a part of me that has just thought that all of everything I liked is gone, and we're just not going to see that again. And that was also part of it too, is, a lot of what I love, my thinking was, well, the culture just isn't producing art that is reflective of these values and aesthetics, and content that I think is really important and really essential. I'm just not seeing it reflected. And if I do, I see it fleetingly or in a very simulacrum, lame-o kind of way. And so my whole thing was that time has passed. I'm okay with the fact that it has passed. I have accepted that. And I am simply going to rhapsodize about why it is and was important for me and maybe for you and maybe for the world. That has kind of been my goal. The idea that I'm talking about literal college kids is kind of wild to me, and I never thought I would be here, and I never thought that this would be happening. So that's crazy to me in a really positive way. But anyway, so while I think maybe they are coming from an indie thing or like a whatever, I don't even know the fucking terminology, dream pop or shoegaze or any of this stuff. While they're coming from that, for me, what is important about the Orchids and the way that I hear them is actually much more American. And it's actually much more rooted in, the power of the Midwest, God damn it. And so the Orchids managed to synthesize, for me, all of these threads. And what I can boil it down to in a phrase is the significance or the importance of innocence. And I think innocence is something that our culture really hasn't valued in a very long time. My generation, Gen X, remember us, certainly were very willing to throw out the window, and Lord knows I did. I couldn't wait to cast away my innocence. But they managed to create music that is genuinely reflective, and I really admire this, is genuinely reflective of their lives and their culture, but is also has not been like ruined by the world. They have somehow not been corrupted or propagandized by the world. And we live in a time where it is easier more than ever, more than at any other point in all of human history, perhaps, to be corrupted and or propagandized and get rewarded for that. You will get endless pats on the back from your little circle for acting out in certain ways. And it is a gross thing. And I think the innocence of the Orchids is in some ways what's going to save us. Because as much as I have wanted to plant seeds, what I've thought about is if there is going to be something positive that comes through and comes forward for the future, and it's not just going to be some dystopian hellscape, it's going to need, and I mean, I was thinking this 2-3 years ago, it's going to need innocence, but it's also going to need the power of youth, because it's not going to come from a fucking guy in his 40s. And as much as I have peers and colleagues who I love dearly, and we are trying our best and we're doing our best, there's something about the power of youth, there's something about the momentum of youth that carries, culturally, weirdly, carries its own gravitational pull, that at some point, like, it doesn't matter if you're older coming in, it doesn't matter whether you're Moondog or Francis Ford Coppola. It's just not going to have the same heft to it for some reason. I'm really not sure why that is. But the Orchids managed to articulate and synthesize all of these threads of innocence in rock and roll, the world's greatest medium, the world's greatest art form. They somehow managed. And they're not really interested in like subverting the art form. They're interested in honoring it. And that's something that I also just find really interesting and really endearing, because I actually think that was one of the things that was endearing about Gen X is at least my part of Gen X, we weren't saying fuck the 60s or fuck the punks, or like we if anything, we were trying to like meld it all together and see what we could learn from it and honor and respect what was cool about it and what worked about it, So Whether you are talking about, and I have a big pile of examples here, whether you're talking about like early doo-wop stuff, you know, again, I think that as rock and roll matured and it became harder and darker, a lot of things like this sort of got lost along the wayside. I talked about the phenomenon of that a little bit in my Lou Reed Coney Island Baby video. And that there's almost like a misunderstanding now in the history of rock and roll about that was always there and should have, I think, always been maintained. And whether it's early British invasion stuff or, one of my favorite, or sort of the grand poet of Innocence, the poet laureate of Innocence, the great Jonathan Richman, who take him as a beatific man-child at your own peril, because his songs are actually really sophisticated and highly, highly intelligent, and highly, as he aged, highly adult. He writes about the specifics of adult experience profoundly well, But when I talk about Innocence, I think the single recording that captures Innocence the most is one of my favorite recordings of all time, and that is You Movin'. There are two versions of it, but I think it's the first take of You Movin' by the Byrds. It's about seeing a girl dance at a party or a jamboree and being like completely struck by her, and the momentum, the propulsion, the excitement, the enthusiasm, the genuine guilelessness of it doesn't get better than that. And the Byrds perform it in such a wonderful, giddy, headlong rush. I think it's one of the most perfect rock and roll recordings of all times. And you can name 100 classic rock bands, and I don't think a single song of theirs comes even close to You Movin'. It's one of my favorite things ever. The sort of more earthier, worldly version of it would be Looking at You by the MC5. A similar vibe. You then have sort of the neo-primitive version of Innocence. But what I like is that there's the sophistication just underneath that. And so Beat Happening is great. So Beat Happening were very instrumentally primitive, but lyrically and conceptually very complex. Specifically off of these recordings, the song Run Down the Stairs is a fascinating portrait of psychological dislocation and a, again, highly sophisticated, extremely well-written portrayal of it. One of my all-time favorite albums, and I talked about before, is this. And this is what the Orchids remind me of the most. The debut album by the Slumber Party. I think this came out in 1999 on Kill Rock Stars. They made other records. Those other records are cool. They had other lineups. Marcy, who dated Jack White, who was in the Von Bondies for a while, later joined the band. But this is a crystallization. This is perfect. This is the suburbs of Detroit late at night, and it's really, really, really beautiful and really, again, earthy and life-affirming, but also comfortable in its own innocence. To the point where I actually philosophically disagree with some of the lyrical points of view, but god damn it, the harmonies and the enthusiasm and just the absolutely brilliant songwriting carry through and make a convincing argument on its own terms. But from the time I was a kid, I mean, I was into Take Good Care of My Baby. I mean, I was, this is my dad. This used to be sold on TV. You called like a 1-800 number or whatever, and it was a mail order. But I used to, this is all late 50s, early 60s stuff. I mean, I grew up listening to all of this. And the Everly Brothers and Buddy Holly, and that was all music that was really important to me. I had specifically asked the Orchids if they liked REM, and because they remind me a lot of this. The color of the gargoyle and this is what the Orchids sound like to me, and I just couldn't get over that. They are very early REM to me, and without being arch or pretentious about it, there is a fragmented dream logic to a lot of Caden's lyrics that are reflective. He's not anywhere near as abstract as Michael was. But what it turns out, what I heard as REM is their influence from the Smiths, because lest we forget, there was a time where the Smiths were where REM was the American Smiths. So I related it to this. And the early period of REM is such a unique thing, and such a, they don't rely on any cheap gimmicks or stunts for power. And the power and the propulsion and the beauty of the music is shot through. And then what else do I hear in them? Well, I hear this. I hear 1969 Live by the Velvet Underground. Again, that there's a danceability, that there's a joy, and that Lou Reed, of all people, it wasn't just until Coney Island Baby, but it was just honesty and joy and fascinating frankness. And then finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the first White Stripes album, or any of those early White Stripes recordings. I could have grabbed the Lafayette Blues single. I was into the White Stripes really early on, and this was also, at that time, very, very important for me when I was in my early 20s. And they manage, I say all that because the Orchids, in their own way, managed to tie all of these strands together, whether they were actually ever influenced by a lot of this music or not. And I don't necessarily know that they were. They weren't by REM. I was sort of, but they're super into Lush, So what I was relating to REM is more the Smiths and Lush. So anyway, I didn't know that anything like this was ever going to grow from the soil ever again. I didn't know that culture was ever going to produce anything like this that I would relate to ever again, and that I would understand again on an intuitive, back the second mind level. And it is really, really, really heartening, and has given me some hope for the future. It really has. It's been a very beautiful thing for me to encounter new music that I am genuinely moved by, and that I understand and recognize the qualities of, and the values and aesthetics of, in my own little way. So it is pretty amazing to me. So I am very, very, very happy that they are the first. Also the idea that these are literal college kids who aren't on some retro trip, they're not on some cosplay trip, they're not on some simulacrum trip, that this is genuinely what they are, and that they are from down the street from me. How did that happen? How did these flowers... Oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing that, but I'll commit to it, damn it. It's so cornball. For real. How did these flowers, these orchids, how did this grow from the soil? I never thought it would be possible. I thought everything had been poisoned to the point where there would be nothing good ever again. How did it happen? It is a minor miracle to me. So with that, I think I have gone on a lot longer than I had wanted to. Damn it, we're going to move into album talk. The debut album by the Orchids, as I said before, is something of a somewhat conjoined version of the two EPs. So side one. So this half was recorded at Rec Room Studios in Des Plaines, Illinois. It is pronounced Des Plaines for anyone who is curious. When I was in the hospital as a teenager, my dad and I watched the John Wayne Gacy story, which was dramatized on television, clearly filmed in Canada, because they kept saying Des Plaines. And it's Des Plaines. So anyway, that's a very important matter that needed to be cleared up. My understanding, unless my information is wrong, is that all of this was recorded in 2 very long marathon recording sessions as the members were getting ready to head out to college. I hope I am applying that information correctly. We'll see. And I believe that this EP was mixed by Chris Cosgrove. So, but let us get into it. So, the first song, Field Trips, the first song I heard, the one that won me over, the song that made me a fan. I just thought it was that good. So, Field Trips, interestingly, anachronistically, begins with the sound of inserting a cassette into a cassette deck, which, 20 years ago would have been anachronistic. But now, I think there are people who are younger who actually listen to cassettes. So is it now not anachronistic? Strange. I don't know. But that's the sort of modality and time shift that I can appreciate, damn it. But Field Trips is a really beautiful, a la a Sugar Mountain, an absolutely beautiful evocation, imagistic evocation of youth. And one of the first things that you're struck by is the truly angelic nature of Caden's vocal delivery. He has a really beautiful voice, and he can really sing. You know, this isn't somebody trying to sing. The other thing that you notice is, wow, what a unique, interesting, beautiful vocal melody. You know, these kids are really gifted. How unique is that? And then, so like I said, great lyrics. The other thing that's so interesting is, as an arrangement and as a band, you know, it would be easy to focus on Caden and Matthew. However, Connor and Kate are just as important, because there are a number of tempo fluctuations. One of the things that you hear a lot now in a Pro Tools world is you have a lot of people who just over-egg every single pudding, and everyone wants to convince you that they're the Brian Wilson of whatever, and they want to make everything their good vibrations, and they're going to like shatter your mind with their wild sonic onslaughts. And the simplicity with which this is recorded, the taste level, I really cannot overstate the taste level, and that they just have the good goddamn sense to play as a band. That the simplest, I remember in the Michael Azerrad book, we were talking about when Nirvana recorded In Utero, saying like, instead of like having some sort of like room trigger on Kurt's voice and some sort of like mic trigger that would, you know, like they just had him sing in a large room. That's it. It's the sound of his voice. And that's sort of like Occam's razor approach to creativity. And why screw around if you don't need to? Why screw around if you have the goods and you are the goods? That's a big part of it. So the way that the band just simply plays as a band, and that you can hear the room, and that they had the good sense to not screw around with that. And so, you know, Kate leads them through these tempo shifts that feel extremely organic, that feel very, very natural. There's very natural, organic ebbs and flows to the music that mirrors the shifting, changing perspectives and mood swings in people that age. It is such a natural extension, and that is part of what I respond to, is actual portraits of innocence, actual portrayals of innocence lapse into weird sentimentality, or especially when it's younger people trying to do it, they're trying to sound older or more world weary than they actually are, and it lapses into, you know, weird overwriting or things being really top heavy or awkward. This is completely natural on both levels, both the level that where they're at currently in their lives, but then that they are reflecting on their younger selves. The other thing is funny is told my friends that we were brothers line. I had that. My best friend when I was like 6 years old was this kid. His family, they were literally off the boat from Italy. The parents could barely speak English. Tony, and there were a couple other kids, but Tony was the one that I was best friends with. And Tony and I used to tell people that we were we were brothers. We were clearly, he was, you know, I am this, and he was very, very, you know, deeply olive complected, like literally like from Italy. And we couldn't have looked more drastically different if we had tried. I had, you know, bright blonde hair. So, but where they do, interestingly, and it's, and what I mean in terms of taste level is, it's not an adoption of world weariness, but it is a really, really adroit, like, way of talking about when you are that age. You know, when Caden sings about, like, you know, I wanted more, but I've been on a losing streak. Like, you know, my arms are sore, I've wanted more, but I've been on a losing streak. Like, I know what that feels like. And I remember, like, at first entering, like, the working world and feeling like that. Like, I completely understand the mentality of that. And as somebody who at times has lived in with a pretty abstract relationship to the past, I could key into that pretty easily. Also, the line about, growing older, and so's the devil on my shoulder. And that is, that's something I've been thinking a lot lately. I recently have been really fascinated with Carl Jung's Red Book. Spent a lot of time this year looking into shadow self stuff and fighting demonology and Santorian lore and studying the iconography. And recently just listened to a whole thing about not fighting or dealing with your shadow self, that's actually not the route to go. And all these years later, and all of the dark energy that I have summoned up in my life in one form, willingly or just through sheer silliness, that's been a big thing with me. That's a couple people in my life that's been the big go with light. Or if you're going to create something or make something, create with light. I've been hearing that a lot lately. And so that, I remember it, I remember it when, but I also, it resonates with me now as a 48-year-old. Beautiful lyrics. Beautiful guitar playing. That's another thing you start to notice is, boy, this kid, this Matthew, is really good at guitar tones and really, really plays really beautiful, intelligent, melodic guitar solos that add compositionally. They aren't solos for the sake of solos. The other thing is Connor on the synths. Beautiful, unexpected counterpoint synth lines. Beautiful, fantastic. Such intelligent. The idea that they have the gift for both melody, compositional structure, playing, and arrangements. It's almost as if these kids are, like, fucking amazing, So the next song, we have a complete mood shift, a fantastic mood shift, and that is Down and Out. And, you could read a lot of gentility into the Orchids. They're literally named after flowers. And their social media posts, love always the Orchids, etc. But Down and Out is, you see, that's the whole thing. No, they are a real-life rock and roll band. First of all, the secret weapon of this song, Kate's drums. The Gene Krupa thing, Not for Nothing. Her fills the artfulness and intelligence of her playing and the way that she propels them and plays these, like, keeps the momentum going with her playing is absolutely fantastic. That is outstanding, really intelligent London 1967-1968 drumming, and it's the kind of rock and roll drumming that I love and that you don't really hear a lot of people try to do, especially in this day and age. And I absolutely love the playing and the tastefulness of the playing. But what a fantastic song. What a cool approach to a sort of girl done me wrong set of lyrics without going into, like, obvious kind of reprobate revenge or vengeance tales, but just portrays it just enough. There's just enough in there that you can extrapolate what happened. And the other thing is, for having sung like an angel, like Roger McGuinn and not that many others, the Byrds comparisons are just going to keep coming here, folks. Like Roger McGuinn, Caden can sing rock and roll, but he can also can sing and be angelic sounding, but he can also have a true rock and roll growl to his voice that sounds fantastic when he does it. Maybe a little bit of Stephen Stills in the Buffalo Springfield, a little bit of that vibe as well. Fantastic, great lyrics, but just also a really fun video where it's almost like it's sort of home movie, but almost like a little like Monkeys-esque, and I love that, and I love that they're willing to do that. I love that they are willing to craft an identity and an image for themselves. That's part of what I love, and most rock bands don't do that, you know, and the one of the last times a rock band did that really, really well, I mean, I guess the White Stripes were good at it, but when Sonic Youth did the Titanium expose video, like that, like I wish bands were more willing to do that sort of thing. And the Down and Out video is just, it's carefree, but it's constructed just enough that you know what they're doing. The other thing I will throw in, by the way, is there's one cutaway shot. It's like half a second, but that's also funny. I just can't help but mention this. It's steps away from a restaurant that my wife and I go out to for dinner. I saw that. I was like, I know where that was shot. And it's a little silly for me to throw that in, but I will. But what a fantastic song. But as much as I've talked about the other members, kind of stealing the show, Matthew, with a beautiful, piercing guitar. You hear the John Squire here. Beautiful, piercing guitar solo. And he does the kind of thing that very few people do, Cinnamon Girl style kind of, that was one note, but this is a mostly two-note solo that he just wrings all sorts of intensity out of. And with a wonderful na-na-na-na chorus. I mean, most people wouldn't have the guts to do that, and these kids do. They're audacious enough. They're audacious enough to do a na-na-na-na chorus. That's fantastic. That I love that, and I love that they did that. So the next song, we then go into a completely different shift. Mirrors, a more sort of laid back. I don't even know how you would describe the groove of it, but far more laid back, laconic. And another kind of relationship, not really going the right way sort of song, but written about in such, again, the details are right. And I'll throw in another personal detail. The line in there about go smoke your cigarettes and being grossed out by that after a while. And when I talk about innocence, that's another thread. They're inadvertently, perhaps, I don't know, invoking the great Nick fit. They're somehow invoking straight edge DC. Which I'm also a huge fan of. I love that. And you know, in my past, when I was their age, I had two separate girlfriends who were heavy smokers. One was like a 3-pack a day, like Camel unfiltered smoker. And as the years have gone by, periodically I think back, I'm like, I must have really been smitten. How in the hell? I mean, short of neck tats, I don't know what else I could find less attractive now than somebody like reeking of cigarettes. Ugh. And just to key in on that and the way that, like, that's the thing that sets them off. Again, we have beautiful, beautiful tempo shifts. Caden's in the chorus. It is Caden's sister, Carissa. Carissa does the high, wavering vocal harmony. Absolutely beautiful job. I love when people do that. I love when people bring in like a family member or something, like when Ray Davies would bring in Rasa to sing on like Waterloo Sunset or something. I love that. And she does a great job. The thing that's so interesting too about Mirrors with like the outro and again the tempo shifts and Matthew's guitar playing is the wholeness of the composition, and that these things are fully thought through. These are not fragmentary musings or attempts at songwriting. These are really fully thought out, really well composed, really beautifully written songs. And I'm a song person more than I'm anything else. And I'm not a genre person, really. And, you know, I like the Cramps because I like the songs, not because I can name 50 obscure psychobilly bands, you know? And so, Mirrors is another, like, absolutely glorious song, 3 in a row. And then we get Be My Girl, a weird, interesting, very creative genre pastiche where it sort of goes, it sort of starts off 50s, but indie 50s, right? And there a lot of people have gone to that well, but right away the sort of the musical intelligence of somebody wrote this song before, like I love that. And then I love that it goes into this more rocking chorus with great vocal harmonies. Matthew plays his ass off. And also just the fact that they manage, again, kind of in using a na 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 chorus. Be My Girl. Is there a more originally rock and roll sentiment than that? I mean, that's, again, we're back into Eddie Cochran and doo-wop and Buddy Holly and Fats Domino territory with, and I love, again, I love that they have the guts to do it. It's unself-conscious. It's not self-consciously retro. It's not any sort of simulacrum. It is what they are now, and reflective of where they are. And I again, it's just really beautiful and inspiring to me that there are people writing songs these strong and this melodically resonant and that can really play this stuff. And I'll tell you, when Kate hits the fucking toms to go into the chorus, that's a beautiful moment. That is a truly beautiful moment. I love it. Then we get to the one recording that is exclusive to this release. It's the alternate version of Wish You Well, which is a magnificent song, but I think we're going to actually push that ahead. We'll talk about both versions. We'll compare and contrast when we get to the end of the album, perhaps. So we're just going to skip ahead. And we get to Perfection, and a side closer, Perfection. Now, how in the hell are these kids not into REM? Because this is like one of those songs that would be on the second half of side one or somewhere tucked away on side two of Reckoning. How is this not the layering of the guitars, the beautiful shimmering layering of the guitars, the sort of slightly somewhat swallowed vocal delivery that's just a little undermixed, as opposed to Caden's been pretty up high and in front this whole time, and also the other thing is REM to the birds, as we all know. That's a pretty lateral move in a lot of ways. There is a near quotation of "I'll feel a whole lot better," except very slowed down. And I almost feel like, like, it's so interesting to me that if they are in fact not influenced, that they have, again, that there are these young people that have somehow stumbled into that unique of a mood, and that there is then this implied lineage going from 60s to 80s to now. And I love that. And what a magnificent song. Like very circular, kind of somewhat impressionistic lyrics, meditative lyrics. Maybe that's meditative as opposed to impressionistic is a better way of putting it. But what I really, really love is that when he starts talking about seeing himself in the reflection, that the voice is double tracked. And the oral mirage of the two Cadens as he sings about seeing himself in a reflection. I love that. These are very creative young people. God bless them. And what a beautiful song. And what a kind of a perfect way, because it's a, I don't want to say it's a minor song. It is not. But it doesn't have the sort of quiet ambition of Field Trips, Down and Out, Mirrors, Be My Girl. And I think that it is the perfect contrast and a perfect side ender. And again, just these ebbs and flows and shifts and dynamics, shifts and moods, shifts in perspectives. Absolutely fantastic. Oh, the other thing I do have to say about Perfection, Matthew's guitar solo, a really beautiful, his most nimble solo, and manages when it becomes more rocking, he just kicks it out, like, without going into like freak out territory. He kicks it out beautifully, and it's just the controlled passion of that is magnificent. Again, the taste level is really something to be admired, and the melodic sense that they have, absolutely gorgeous. So with that, we shall flip the record over. Okay, so we have flipped the record over, and we get to side two, which is essentially the lighter EP, and so we will just get into that. So lighter is just, again, the Orchids write great rock and roll songs. They're really, really good at it. And this is more of sort of, I guess, what is called beach or beach goth. I don't know. I don't know these things, and I don't pretend to know. But it has that, again, I mean, I would relate it back to more sort of K Records kind of stuff. But how do I say this? The Orchids instrumentally they're not primitives. They're much better than the K Records band. They're much better as players, as musicians. Sorry, but they are. And it's just a fantastic song with great counterpoint harmonies. I think those are by Matthew. Absolutely fantastic. And also, speaking of Matthew, again, amazing guitar solo, but that guitar tone, and also these, I'm pretty sure these were all mixed by the bass player Connor, and he did an absolutely phenomenal job. Again, college kid, or maybe high school kid at the time, I don't know, but goddamn, that is absolutely amazing. And just the ability to mix the tonalities and understand how to layer that is just magnificent. And I love it. It is it's like Down and Out, in that they can just knock out these great, awesome, short, to the point rock and roll songs, and then have these great little touches. So in this case, a clapping and whistling outro. Perfect, beautiful. And on one hand, how creative. On the other hand, when you're listening to it, there's footage of them playing live, and I will link to some footage of them playing live. When they do, it could be no other way. It makes all the sense in the world, and the fact that they are able to do that intuitively, and the fact that they are able to not get in their own way in terms of coming up with arrangements, all of it just feels so incredibly natural, and it is water dripping off of their fingertips, and I absolutely love that. The next song is another rock and roller. Side two basically splits the difference, and that is Sorry Not Sorry, one of their first songs. Again, another fantastic rock and roll song. It's probably melodically the most indistinct song, but it's still fantastic. Again, Connor's bass playing on it is great. There's the sort of, not necessarily call and response, but what could be in a live setting is really, really effective. Kate's drums are great, and it demonstrates their ability to just knock out these fantastic, punchy rock and roll songs. And again, I love the fact that they don't go for easy gimmicks and easy shortcuts to power and propulsion, and that in a way makes them more rock and roll. And the fact that they never succumb to their own gentility or their own melodicism, that doesn't override their ability to play rock and roll, and I love that about them. However, also, yes, this was recorded at Park Street Recording Studio. I don't know where that is. I'm assuming it is not in Des Plaines. It's Des Plaines. If you really want to irritate me, say Des Plaines. So anyway, but nothing prepares you for the next song, and it is a little jarring to go from the rock and roll of Sorry Not Sorry. And it's not that I'm shortchanging Sorry Not Sorry, but I sort of am. It's not that I want to, but yeah, I sort of am, because I really want to get to Standing in the Rain. So Standing in the Rain, Sorry Not Sorry, they're apparently their first two songs. I can't imagine starting with these two songs. That's pretty incredible. Standing in the Rain seems like it should be a later song. It's far afield from what you should start writing with, and it explains how they've been able to write such fantastic songs. And we'll get to what they're currently up to. So Standing in the Rain is the second best thing that they've ever done. And the best thing here. What's that? Oh, we'll get to it. Don't you worry. But it is the best thing here. And field trips, field trips down and out. Those are pretty damn close. But if I was going to direct you to anything as a starter, it would be field trips or Standing in the Rain. Standing in the Rain is a total knockout punch of a song. The thing that the Orchids are able to do, and without being arch about it or self-conscious about it, is they are able to give you impressionistic portrayals, and they are able to describe sensory experiences both in lyric, but then melodically, but then in terms of their sound. And that is a difficult thing to do. That is, very few bands or songwriters can pull that off. That's kind of it's a sort of like a magic trick that is difficult. It's difficult to not see the seams, creases, and folds and all of that. And so what you have is you have an absolutely dynamite chord structure, just an absolutely perfect chord structure that is two things. It is majestic, or quietly majestic, because it doesn't announce itself like this is major. It's not like a self-conscious epic or something like that. Yet it draws attention to itself because it is quietly powerful. And yet, in its own weird little way, it is also very propulsive. I do have to say, Connor's bass line, and when you see them play it live, like his playing live on this is really, really beautiful. Like, you really get to appreciate what he brings to the band. But you've got to give it to Kate's drum pattern and what she is doing on the snare, because what she is doing is in just terms of edging things along and keeping things like right at this sort of near breaking point. And it's just really, really, really intelligent musical thinking and playing. And with that chord structure, you have such a dynamite vocal melody. And then Caden's lyrics, which again are slippery with the specifics. It reminds me a little of the Harry album that I reviewed. It's a little Nilsson-esque in the sort of the sleight of hand that you get the impression, but you don't get all of it sort of filled in, and you can sort of plug in the rest, and the music fills in a lot of the rest. And that the sensuality of some of the details is enough to like hook you in and draw you in and keep you enthralled. And there is a spiritual and hymnal quality to the music. And again, without drawing attention to itself, there's kind of zero, there's total lack of pretension in how it is performed and portrayed. And it is just the sound of these four kids fucking playing in a room, and the fact that they're just summoning this up on their own. There's not bells and whistles, there's not crazy production stuff, they're not going for overwhelming oral effects. This is just what they sound like. Again, it kind of has that Velvet Underground thing, or when you hear the Jane's Addiction demos, or where, or even like Joy Division, they just sound like this. This is how they sound in a room. And it has that sort of extra sensory thing that is just, it's rare and super impressive. And you cannot really swap out the component parts of that, and the song moves along beautifully. And again, what the guitars are doing, and Caden's voice is so good that really he doesn't have to do much. All he can, for lack of a better way of putting it, all he has to do is just sing it. All he has to do is just put it straight up the middle. He doesn't have to go for anything or try and hit crazy notes or oversell it in any way. He just sings it in like such a straight ahead way because the song is just so fucking perfect and killer. And he sings it with a lot of emotion, and it is clearly deeply felt, but you never get the feeling like he's like going for broke, which again is part of the quiet ambition and majesty that they are achieving. And again, this ethereal sort of spiritual quality in the music. But all of that is, you still feel like you're being set up. You still feel like it's, and Kate's drumming does a really beautiful job. It's got that sort of Stephen Perkins Summertime Rolls thing where she's controlling the dynamics, and it's building, but it's quiet, and then we get to the fucking guitar solo, an absolute corker of a guitar solo, an all-time classic of a guitar solo. And Matthew, who has quietly at this point been building a case, is kind of a budding master of tone and kind of a genius of tone. And again, we're not talking about crazy Kevin Shields or Billy Corgan textures. Like, this is all really straightforward. This is just how they sound. He's just doing this with kind of minimal effects. And that solo, god damn it, when that solo comes in, I know the song is Standing in the Rain, but what it really is it's standing on the beach before, on an overcast day with rain coming down, and standing before the tide. And that guitar solo is the sun piercing through. It is a beautifully majestic moment and gives you the complete, like, sort of like all-encompassing, overwhelming thing that you need to have happen, that it's been building to. So the control that these kids have displayed and their control of dynamics is so perfect, because when the guitar solo comes in and the rhythm section comes in, it is so goddamn perfect. It is such a absolutely beautifully controlled moment, and he rings the hell out of that solo, and he just fucking plays it to the fucking heavens, man. It is a beautiful brief guitar solo, but so perfect, so absolutely ridiculously perfect. And it is that sort of like, wow, where the hell did that come from? Even though he's been playing great solos, it is just such a magnificent moment, and it's so inspirational for me. I really love it, you know? Going with the light. That's what we're doing here, people. We are going with the light, damn it. And on one hand, there's part of me that initially, like the first couple times I listened to this, I thought, it's crazy. I know they sort of brought over the EP, but it's like, it's crazy that there's a song after this. Like, it should end with Standing in the Rain. Like, Standing in the Rain should be how every set ends. Like, that's it. Standing in the Rain. And then the solo, like ta-da, like, and it's this heroic, hymnal, beautiful, spiritual, evocative, ethereal, majestic thing. But no, we have Wish You Well. So we will talk now about the two versions of Wish You Well. Wish You Well is a little bit more fully produced, the alt version, which is, again, exclusive to this release. Oh, and I haven't shown the record. Mine is green. I'm not Mr. Colored Vinyl. However, if you are going to do colored vinyl, this is pretty beautiful. And also you can see the sort of Smiths-esque sort of... I love it. It's beautiful. It's really, like, their artwork and their aesthetic I really love. And so anyway, but the first version of Wish You Well is, again, I'm gonna muck it up. It is Caden's sister Carissa singing, and she does a beautiful job. It sort of splits the difference between, like, the female vocals. I'm forgetting the name of the member in My Bloody Valentine. It sort of splits the difference, and apologies, but it splits the difference between that and, like, Jandek Stephanie Sings, and she has a beautiful voice. There is, again, an innocence to it and a guilelessness to it that works, and it's gorgeous. It is a beautiful recording, and it's a beautiful version of the song, and it is produced very well. It sounds great. However, And also, I should say, according to Matthew, the song was written for her to sing. So it really was their intention to have her sing it, and that is how it should sound. And that is all well and good. That's great. However, in Caden, you have an extremely talented singer. And the version that closes this off makes all the sense in the world, following up something as majestic as Standing in the Rain, because Wish You Well becomes the real closer. And Wish You Well, you have had a couple of sort of relationship, confusion around relationships and what is this and where are you going? Where am I going? And I understand that it's supposed to be sung from the girl's perspective, and that's all well and good. However, in Caden's hands, the song takes on a completely different quality. And I had specifically this lyric. I saw you cry that night. Now, this is how the song opens. I saw you cry that night. Now I can't get my late night ice cream at Oberweis. It takes a lot of balls to sing about not being able to get your ice cream at Oberweis because you're upset. That is, the psychology of that is fucking amazing and fascinating. And I love that. And it's one thing for a girl to sing that. And it sounds great. And she is ethereal and angelic sounding. She has an absolutely beautiful, pure voice. And I love it. And get the vinyl and you will hear that version. And it's awesome. I don't believe it's online whatsoever. So, it is 1,000% worth hearing. And as a counterpoint, beautiful. I love it. I love when there's multiple versions of a song on an album. It's one of my favorite things. Okay. So I think that's really, 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 really cool. However, Caden's voice, especially coming after Standing in the Rain, this is him at his most angelic sounding. And again, you have an absolutely perfect chord structure. And that arrangement and the harmonies that join him, I don't know if Carissa's joining him on the harmonies. I don't know. I guess I don't know if it's Matthew and Connor on the vocal harmonies. But when that rush of vocal harmonies comes in on the chorus, that is REM Find the River level fucking beautiful. Timeless beauty. Perfect harmonies. I'm a sucker for vocal harmonies. It's the reason I love the Byrds so much. And their usage of those are absolutely perfect. But even before that, everything that leads up to that, the plaintive intro is perfect. Again, I really, one more time, for lyrics that are that slippery and ethereal and impressionistic, the detail of, and again, the psychology of, I saw you cry that night. Now I can't get my late night ice cream at Oberweis. Fuck. That, and that's what I'm talking about in terms of innocence and in terms of them being comfortable with who they are and being expressive of who they are and not trying to appear more world weary or older than they are. And for once, because that's the thing that you never have in youth. In your youth, you're never fucking smart enough to just appreciate your own youth. Okay, and to actually just portray it for what it is, right? Every single person I grew up with was always overreaching. And these kids are fucking smart enough to not overreach and to put in a detail as good as that. It's not wonky. It doesn't draw attention to itself. It's not self-conscious. It's not played for irony. I love them for that. If that was the first song I ever heard, I would have been a fan just off of that. That is magnificent. That's real stuff. That's getting down to reality. I love it. I love it. So, but then, that seesawing melody going into the absolute glorious classical beauty of that chorus, is just spectacular. It's just spectacular. And then that outro, the chordal outro, and it raises, the whole thing raises to a point where it feels like the angels have come, and you have this sort of weird, like, I guess, happy ending sort of resolution of it, like, it feels classically beautiful, and it resolves, and the whole thing is like, they don't leave you standing in the rain. They leave you at this sort of like contemplating the heavenly machinations of everything around you sort of peak. It is a gloriously beautiful ending, and it really could end no other way. Even though standing in the rain would be the logical ending, they do you one better, and they shapeshift over to that. And that is some pretty masterful editing. And this is a great band that exists right now, and I think they're playing shows this weekend. Now, you might have noticed that I had said the second best song. What does that mean, Rich? Well, that means because their best song is a newer song. They have a couple new ones. One is called Attraction, which is lovely and really interesting, and I like it. But the other song that I hope to God, whenever it comes out, I hope it comes out soon, is a song called Speechless. And I'm going to be linking to Speechless. I'm going to link to a live performance of it, as well as they recently did a live recording session for the Sonic Muse, and I'm going to be linking to that. Because listen to what they do in terms of the dynamics, and that is, again, them playing live in a room. No audience, no nothing, just the sound of these four incredibly talented young kids. And literal fucking college kids. I used to tell, 10 years ago, a good friend of mine, Van, when we would be having like these all hope is lost conversations, and the world that we knew is just totally gone forever, like despair conversations about how fucked up things are. I used to say, because you would hear these sort of stories about like younger kids like using Spotify the way we used to try to use record stores, or obsess over books and stuff. And I remember saying to him, I was like, you know what, man, I bet that the stuff that's going to be cool, it's like kids who are like 8-year-olds right now, and they're going to like grow up in this world, and they're going to understand intuitively, even if it's not intellectual, they're going to intuitively understand that they've been given like a 15th rate version of reality, and they are going to try to create their own culture and forge something that is based upon truth and beauty. And they are going to go forth, and if there is hope for the future, we're not going to see it for like another decade. And God damn it, it fucking happened. It happened, and they're not alone. It's unbelievable to me. It is unbelievable to me. And you can see in their faces when they're playing that they know that they're good. And again, to have any sense of self-actualization at that age is so rare. It's so rare. Back in my day, with roomfuls of people who had none of that, we used to call it Gen X nights. And you would just go out with your friends, and you'd wind up in some stupid apartment, and people would just be sitting around with cigarettes and just staring at each other, moaning, and it would be like, oh, how was the party? It'd be like, oh, it was one of the Gen X nights, and to have self-actualization, and they know that they're good is rare and beautiful. They are the goods. They are the thing. I love it. And the song Speechless is right up there with Standing in the Rain and Field Trips. It is, again, a sensory experience that is portrayed as a sensory experience in music and in performance. And that is very, very, very hard to do. That is an absolutely magical song with glorious melodies, glorious guitar playing, and the rhythm section at the absolute top of their form, because you need that rhythm section to support what the vocals and the guitars are doing. And that is the single greatest thing that they've done so far. God only knows what the future has for them, but the future is unlimited, because they certainly have the talent, and they're crafting the vision basically in real time. And it's really, 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 really cool for me to see it happening. And God bless them. God bless them. And so check this out. It is extremely worth it. I'll be linking to their Instagram. I'll link to their YouTube. There's the two versions of the YouTube, right? There's the one that has like their videos and their shorts and stuff. And then there's, I guess I'll link to their TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. TikTok is like the bridge I can't cross as a 48-year-old. Like I'll never be on TikTok. Like it's just never going to happen. That's my line, you know. But then there's the YouTube channel that has all their releases. This is not on there, but you can listen to the Lighter and Reflections EPs and get the full sense of just how great these guys are. I will be linking to multiple versions of Speechless, but check out the live in the studio version with the Sonic Muse, because that is extraordinary. As far as getting copies of this album, I'm going to read directly from Matthew here. Copies will be available online soon. Waiting for the label to get the website created to take orders. So in the interim, and this is important if you want a copy, if people really want a copy, that you can reach out to them on Instagram and DM them, and you can say Rich sent you. So go and check out the Orchids, subscribe to the Orchids, like the Orchids, leave nice comments for the Orchids. They love you, so love them back, and they are truly, truly deserving of it. And hopefully you have liked this video, so please like and comment and subscribe and all of the YouTube things. And I have many, many videos that I'm planning, including one that I think is going to be a little bit left field, and we'll see if that could potentially be the next one. If the next one is just a normal Rich Talks Records video, that means I decided not to do it, and I don't want to give anything away, but I might do something of a left field video for the next one. We'll see. You'll just have to hang around and see. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I really hope that you've enjoyed this. And the next video hopefully will be very exciting. So until then, until next time, everyone, bye!